Hello, VC. Tony here. Tony's LPs Are Us, Studio E, Elvis Light Lit. Today we're going to talk about, and I'm going to review, and I'm going to do an A-B-C comparison to this album. This would be C. This is the brand new, just got in a few days ago, and I'm really happy I got it. I was kind of on the fence. I'm not, everyone said it's lo-fi. Why should it be high fidelity? But forget about that. This is as high fidelity. This is raw power as you're going to ever get. So I'm going to talk about how I like the new RHINO high fidelity series, limited numbered edition. Never mind the Bollocks. Here's the Sex Pistols. Here we come. And I'm going to go over the other two copies that I have. I'm going to talk about the songs. But my first impression was, wow, this is real quick, and then I'm going to go into my review. But when I first put on my original Warner Brothers, I don't have a UK. Apparently, the UK has a few songs flipped at the end. I think God Save the Queen isn't the last track on the side that it's the last track on here. And I like it on the last track. It's what everyone knows. It's the song that everyone knows from this album, God Save the Queen, which banned them in the UK. But we're going to go into all the trivia and, really extraordinary history of this band that was only around for maybe 2 years or so. But anyway, never mind the Bollocks. I'm going to compare it to a couple copies. But what got me thinking was, wow, this is intense now. It's not as intense as I think when I first heard it in 77, 78, 79, after the album came out and it started to sink in, because it was totally off the wall compared to, there were some punk aspects, the Stooges and, New York Dolls and things, but it wasn't mainstream. This actually almost became mainstream because it was a number one record. God Save the Queen was a number one record, which was amazing. The single, which I'm going to show, I have a UK single of that. But what I said, it's not as intense as it was then. And then I'm thinking, what was this like to hear this record? What was it like to hear, Anarchy in the UK, Bodies, Holiday in the Sun? Nothing is sunny about this record. This record is pure depression, pure. We're at our wits' end. Like we have nothing to live for except fight for whatever we get. So I went back and I checked the Billboard charts in America, not in UK. Now this came out in October, the end of October '77 in the UK on Virgin Records rather, and then here in America on Warner, I guess in November '77. So it was the end of the year. So I'm going to go over a few albums that were, the end all at that time in 1977 in the U.S. And it is a complete, opposite of this. And what's funny too, I just reviewed, I talked about Nebraska, Bruce Springsteen's 1980-ish Nebraska, which was a guitar and some echo he recorded on a cassette deck. And I'm thinking, man, what a complete antithesis of what we're hearing here. So I went back to 77, and I'm just going to show quick, and then I'll read some of the records because I have the list, Billboard's top, I guess, 200, 1977. So these records were from 76, 77. Records were recorded in 76 and 77. They made the list in 77. Now, this was recorded in 76, and it was actually, I think 76, and then it was actually put out in 77. And it's actually number 80 on the infamous, I think I have the book here, Rock and Roll, what do you call it? Great rock, Rolling Stones, 500 greatest albums of all time. And before I forget, I pulled out this rare 1977 promo poster that were given away to record stores in the U.S. Not sure if it was the same as the UK. I think probably not, because the colors of the albums were kind of different. And what I'll do is I'll pull this up so you can see the bottom on the camera. But never mind the Bollocks, very, very rare promo poster. Got it from my record store when I was in college in 1977. And also what struck me, beside what we were listening to, which was like total opposite of this, that was another weird thing. That was the year that Elvis died, that summer. So Elvis died that summer, and rock and roll was maybe the day the music died, and then the Sex Pistols came in and basically reinvented what we're going to hear in the 80s, as far as rock and roll. So I'm going to show some of these records. I don't want to prolong this, but this is 77. This is a top album. Jimmy Buffett. What's this? Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes. Here's the original embossed record. Breezin', the #1 smash, jazz, pop, soul. Breezin'. I remember when I worked in a record shop, people thought that when they came into the store, they asked for the new Stevie Wonder record. They thought this guy sounded like Stevie Wonder. They thought Stevie Wonder. This was his breakout album for pop, but he was around for years. I love his early jazz stuff on CTI and stuff. So this was in 77. Here's the single that comes with this record, a 45. So, Songs in the Key of Life. The Commodores' first album debuted with Lionel Richie. This is as close to Sex Pistols as I think we're going to get. There were some Kiss albums. I think Destroyer was there. But here you have, what's this? Toys in the Attic. The great Aerosmith, still kicking. Marvin Gaye. Come on, Marvin Gaye, Sex Pistols. Totally different. Especially Netherlands, Dan Fogelberg's album. This is an original Dan Fogelberg album, which are really good, really well recorded albums. You could pick these up, usually in $1 bin, $2 bin. Hall & Oates, bigger than both of us. Hall & Oates, the great white soul, plastic soul, rubber soul band from Philly. And then we have this, Rumors. This is an original with the price I wrote at the record shop. We were selling these for $4.74, $3.69, $3.99. I think this was a $6.98 list price, a $7.98 list price. So we discount a lot of hit records. So that's that. Also, Fleetwood Mac was still on the charts. And then we have the great Hotel California, Eagles. And all these records now have been, except maybe for the Commodores and the Fogelberg and things like that, but these records are still being sold today. They're being repressed. They're expanded onto deluxe versions, audiophile versions, if I may, 45 RPMs, things like that. So just imagine we're listening to this, and we come out and we get this on the radio, God Save the Queen. Also, were the Bee Gees' Heart, Dreamboat Annie, which we're waiting for a repress on that from RHINO. Paul McCartney, Wings, George Harrison's 33 1/3, Supertramp, Kiss, Destroyer, Steve Miller Band, Book of Dreams, Teddy Pendergrass, Barry Manilow, Pink Floyd, Animals, probably a little bit on the fringe compared to what we saw in the rest of this compilation. I just pulled a couple. Bee Gees, Here at Last, Bee Gees Live, Eagles, Hotel California, Boston, Boscas, Silk Degrees, Bob Seger, Night Moves, Fleetwood Mac, Eagles, their greatest hits, one of the biggest selling albums of all time, maybe the biggest. Kiss, Rock and Roll Over. I think Kiss Live is on this list. So that's about, and it's a 200 record list. So I'm not going to, as Johnny Ryan would say, F it. So anyway, let's get down to this. So that's what we were listening to. So the first thing I thought about was, man, this is pretty intense. I haven't heard the record in a while, probably a long while, the full record, never mind the Bollocks. So I went and thought, man, here it kind of sounds, now it kind of sounds tame. That's because we've got that 1977 to 2025 gap of so much different genres, grunge, punk, you know, goth, metal. You remember in 77, 76, 78, we didn't have that. So the Bollocks, that's why it's an important album. It basically changed music. These guys said, fuck the establishment. I think, I don't know if it was Johnny Rotten or Sid Vicious. Probably Johnny Rotten had a shirt on that said, I hate Pink Floyd, or, we always thought that the Who were the punks. Early Who, My Generation, Pete Townshend's lyrics of the English working man, the mod versus rockers. But these guys took it to another level. And I'm going to break down some of the songs as far as where the meanings come from. But from what I get, I'm going to go to my review comparison. Here we have my copy, which is a straight Warner copy with a barcode on it. Never mind the Bollocks. Exactly the same same album cover as my other one. This is barcode. Now this record, these records, just to let you know, really have no wear to them. They're excellent, to near mint. So I put it on, got into it, sounded good. I could hear, almost monolith, almost like a mono. Everything was coming out of the front. Not a lot of separation in the speakers, but very powerful, very raw, and like I said, very anti-establishment. Very, very anti-establishment, but that's basically what the record's about. As far as the sound on this, it was pretty good. I thought it was very good. Don't forget, 77 technology was there, but these guys recorded, and you could read the liner notes in the new edition. It'll go into some of the overdubs that the producer got into, and the engineer, the manager got them to do. But very, very, it's not low fidelity. It was kind of high fidelity. It kind of had an edge to it, almost like a Sabbath record. Sabbath was a few years later. Of course, Sabbath was blues, metal. They maybe bridge that gap between blues and metal, but this is punk. This was totally a few years later, totally different. But when RHINO did the first Black Sabbath record, I got that feeling. I'm glad I bought this record, and I'm glad I bought the RHINO. Now, this one is the first edition US, and there's the label. It's not a Warner Brothers label. It's a custom label. And there's the inner, which is the inner gatefold on the RHINO, which I'll show. So this is the inner. Nothing about the songs. There's no song track listing. You have to go to that, and you can see there's no barcode. So you have to read the listing from the label on the record. But to be honest with you, really, these are really close. I give this a little bit of an edge, but really close to the later pressing. Really not a lot of difference on my system. Only ran through everything once. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I played both albums back to back. They're not long. There's the label. You could see that this record is in really good condition. So thought it was, maybe slightly better. Maybe it was my imagination because it was a first pressing. So you have that one, the first pressing, the barcode, subsequent pressing, and then I put this on. This is the new RHINO, limited to 5,000. Glad I got it. Didn't waste my money. $45, $50, well spent. Comes with the Obi, which is cool. Basically the day glow type of green colors. Now as far as I know, the British one has different colors. Maybe kind of inverted. This Dago green and pink, like just reversed somehow. Here's the back. Rhino does a good job. They don't do a barcode on this, so it's very good. And here's the inside again, which is, like I said, the inner sleeve. Now, when I put this on, I got more separation. I heard, I would say, bass was improved. Vocals were always good on all three copies. So fuzzy guitar, and they basically redub. There's one track where all the guitars are. I think there's 3 guitar solos that are meshed together. You could hear the different guitars come in. Just an overall good record. It's well paced. What I do suggest that you do is, and I didn't bring them down here, is listen to it once. If you're not familiar with it, obviously a lot of people won't be familiar with it anymore. But if you listen to it once and then download the lyrics of this album, when you download the lyrics to this album, you get a better understanding of where these guys are coming from. Because let's face it, it's hard to understand, or I can't. Maybe it's just my ears, 68-year-old ears or whatever. I don't comprehend that as good as maybe some younger folks, or maybe it's just me. So get yourself a copy of the lyrics, and you can really get into it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to recommend this as the better sounding one, which is, probably obvious to everyone else. Doesn't sound low fidelity. It sounds high fidelity. For what these guys did, they weren't playing for that long, and their live act was basically the whole this album, maybe a few other tracks mixed in. Kind of reminded me of the Beatles when they played in Germany, and they did their act, and then they did their first album, which was kind of their act that they did live, 10 times a day, basically. So that's what the Sex Pistols was like. Although with the Sex Pistols, they're not worried about note for note. Basically, what they said was live. They basically turned Sid Vicious's bass off. You could not even hear it because he didn't know how to play bass. He's on a few select tracks on this, but he didn't know how to play bass. Glenn was their bass player. He left, and then Vicious came on, and he was so, as I'll say, fucked up on heroin that he was kind of useless. But he had that image, and Johnny Rotten had that image, and they were kind of conflicting. So a lot of these songs were conflicting, not only what was happening in England at the time, or in Europe at the time, but what was happening inside the band. The band was in turmoil. I don't think they liked each other, or that's what they say. So here you have this really nice pressing again. It was packed really well. Took a while to get here, which is the only pet peeve I have regarding Rhino shipping. You order it the day Steve Westman announces it in the morning at 8 o'clock. You order it at 11 o'clock if it's not sold out already. And I think this will probably sell out. And it takes quite a bit to get here. Now, before I go into some of the details on this, I also played this, and this kicks ass. This is my 45. You can see it's a Brit 45, God Save the Queen, and Do You Know Wrong with B-side, and this rocks out. But that's 45 RPM. I cranked it, rocks out, beats the Rhino by a margin. And there is the typical. This is famous. It's also on here. This was banned in the UK. They actually put this out during the Jubilee of the Queen, and it was shocking. The first thing that shocked the London and England, the UK, was when they cursed, when they said fuck and shit on the morning show in 1977, before this record came out, in 1976, before the record came out. And that really shocked London, England, but then they became worldwide sensations. So that little controversy, made this band, a worldwide sensation, or at least a Europe sensation until they hit the shores here. They couldn't even tour in Europe after they were kind of like banned. They were getting beat up. People, they were anti-monarch. It was totally a crazy scene. So they were booked to play in America, and not in America on the East Coast. They played the Deep South. They played in Texas and things like that. So really bizarre for these young 20-year-old kids that were like spit on you and could care less, come disheveled to these shows. So we didn't ever see anything like it. But like I said, the band, they had a #1 record. They had a few other hit singles. Only one album, a studio album. All the rest of the albums were either compilations or stuff recorded live. So let me just go over a few other tidbits I have. But overall, as far as the sound goes, I like it. I like the sound on all of them. The first two were very close. My first pressing, subsequent pressing on Warner, the one with the barcode and the Warner label. But this record gets in the weeds a little bit better. So I definitely would say, if you're looking for this record of what you want to hear, sound wise, it's still punk. It's not. They didn't change it. They didn't tweak it to make it better. It's what it is. It's close to what I heard originally, but just better, just sonically better. Raw, 100% octane. They don't slow down. This band does not slow down, and the sequencing of the record is perfect. I think it builds a lot of catchy tunes. One track reminded me of I think they did a lot of things that they kind of subconsciously pulled from records at the time, and or records that were in London. And I wrote some notes. I don't know if I can find them because I'm kind of punked out here. Let me see here. They said "fuck" on a Today Show in London, '76. Catchy songs for punk, really catchy tunes for punk, and the Clash were catchy, that came later. But just a social revolution in music, and it's hard for me to describe, what I like about this record, why I'm glad I bought it. I'm not gonna listen to it all the time, but I have it and I collect them. It's like, to explain it to you in the way I could articulate it. It's hard. It's like catching smoke or hugging smoke. You can't do it. It's going to be it's evasive to me. It's evasive to communicate why I like it. But I was rocking. I liked it. I like this new record. I'm glad I bought it. And I think you would be glad you bought it too. So let's go over some of the tracks as far as what the deal is on the songs. Real quick. Submission. Great song. Repetitive. Liar is supposed to be some angry contention between Johnny Rotten and the manager Malcolm McLaren, who kind of set the tone for this band when he put them together, kind of set them out there in the States, just almost like Brian did with the Beatles. It was same type of management where he kind of steered them. Although once they became popular, once they became a product and popular, they could no longer exist because they were protesting against everything that was popular and had money and had people bowing down and worshiping them. So once they became that entity, they basically disbanded. It was as if they got to that level and then it wasn't what they wanted. It wasn't what they should be. New York is a cool record. It was a direct jab at the American punk scene. specifically the New York Dolls. So when you listen to New York, get the lyrics out on all these songs. EMI, the song is basically Screw EMI, and that's EMI that the Beatles were on, the Abbey Road EMI, because EMI dropped them once they were being protested for anarchy in the UK. So EMI dropped them, and they were later signed with Virgin, and then in the States, Warner picked them up. God Save the Queen, what can I say? Released during Queen Elizabeth's Silver Jubilee in 1977, the song was a calculated provocation targeting the monarch. It lambasted the monarchy as a fascist regime and declared, "She ain't no human being." That rhymes. The stunt earned the band widespread censorship and outrage, but cemented their notoriety. Rotten later clarified that his anger was directed at the institution of the monarch, not the individuals within it. And Johnny Rotten, went on to different things and stuff. Of course, Sid died of heroin. Pretty Vacant is one of the band's most famous singles, considered a prime example of pop-influenced rock. Really catchy opening riff inspired by ABBA's song SOS, according to bassist Glenn Matlock. So, and there's one track that I don't have my notes, but if you listen to the bass line, it's the Kinks. It has a Kinks bass line to it, where you really got me. The Kinks, you really got me. So they got that, subliminally from things that they were protesting against. When you wanted to buy God Save the Queen, that 45 came out, I guess, April 27, 77, went to #1. Band wasn't available in most stores in the UK. If you asked for it, you would get, well, we don't sell that type of stuff here. We're not going to sell that garbage here. They were getting beat up when they went out in public. The punk look, they were it was a whole different world from where we are now, where everything is commonplace. You see goth, you see hip hop, and hip hop. They kind of reminded me of the early protests in America via hip hop, via the dialogue and the anger directed toward the establishment in a lot of hip hop. Social commentary, social protest. So I got that out of this record. But like I said, you can't explain it. It's like trying to herd cats. You can't explain why this record is something you would like, because there's no melody. It's a few chords over and over shouting out at you. Johnny Rotten was a great front man. He had that thing. He had that thing that you needed. Let me see what other songs on here. Of course, Holiday in the Sun was based on a disastrous band trip to the Channel of Jersey, not New Jersey, but the English Jersey, where they were banned and harassed, allegedly for disturbing the peace. Singer Johnny Rotten, John London, and bassist Sid Vicious decided to flee the UK and went to Berlin, where they actually saw the Berlin Wall, and that's prominent in the lyric. Pretty Vacant, we went over. Submission, No Feelings. Wrote this was inspired by a young orphan girl who became attached to him. And basically, Rotten said, "I have no feelings for you," and he kind of goes over that song. It's also an ode to what is the term? Self-admiration, that stuff, like, people who are narcissistic, attitude, and it kind of, they were against all that. They were against looking good, money, living well, buying material things. They were against all that. God Save the Queen. And of course, Bodies is the song that I believe it's based on, like, an abortion, but technically it goes over that processed really disgustingly, but apparently a girl brought a dead fetus to one of their shows, and that inspired them to write that song, Bodies. So, but overall, I know I'm jumping around, it's a long tape, but overall, I would say get this record. It sounds great. Rhino did another great job. And that's all I could say. You know, like I said, you don't have to be a musician to understand what they did because it's kind of simple. No organ, you know, bass, guitar, drums, and the drummer is rocking. But if you watch the clips on YouTube, the early videotapes from their shows in Texas, in the States, in America, he's like Keith Moon back there, man. He is playing his ass off. He's rocking, and they just say, you know, F you. You know, we know we're ripping you guys off, and people are jumping around, and it's a different world. It was a different world, and just imagine what this sounded like in 1977 when you go back and reflect what we were all listening to in 1976, 77. Also, I don't think it's on this list that I read, but Elvis's Moody Blue came out in 76 or 77 because the year he died was 77. Moody Blue came out. That went to #1, which was, you know, a good album, but good Elvis, right? And then I'm going to put this poster, show you this poster a little bit closer, and then I'm going to say goodbye. And please, if you haven't subbed, please try to sub. I like to, you know, get everyone to participate by subbing. It's free. And please let me know what you think about this record. Let me know if you're going to pick this record up. They're available. You know, it's not a sellout right away. And here is the poster. And you can see, you know, the graphics, which I talked about on a previous video, kind of like the cutouts that you would find in a, you know, blackmail letter, terrorist letter, you know, what have you. So that's it. Put this down gently because that's hard to find. You're not going to get another one. So keep rocking. Thank everyone. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this interview, this video rather. I'm interviewing myself, so hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I got across what I wanted. You know, really well done. They took it to a different level. Not much, you know, not much more I could say. It's not lo-fi. It's definitely hi-fi. You're going to love it. It's, you know, one of the most influential records ever to come out in rock and roll, and it should be in everybody's collection. So thank you, Rhino, and thanks for watching. Talk to you guys later. Ciao.